I've always been the person who can't just train. I need to know why. Why does this exercise work? Why does recovery really matter? Why does sleep affect performance? And honestly, that curiosity has changed everything about how I approach sports science. My guest today has spent his career sitting right at the intersection of research and real-world coaching. He's a professor of sport and exercise science at the Northwest Missouri State University. He's also a certified strength and conditioning specialist and a registered strength and conditioning coach. He has a PhD from the University of Northern Colorado, and he teaches everything from exercise physiology to evidence-based practice. Dr. Kyle Ryan, welcome to the Sports Science Lab.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
So, before we get into the science, can you please talk a little bit about yourself and how you got into sports science?
Of course, yeah. So to be honest with you, sports science, higher education wasn't even part of the plan when I was growing up. I didn't think about college at all. To be honest with you, high school was somewhat boring for me. I wasn't a good student. And I barely graduated. So for me, the opportunity to leave town, to get away, to start my life came from joining the military. So I remember going down and meeting with the Navy recruiter and finding out what positions I could possibly do. And hospital corpsman was one of those jobs that they offered. And so with the Navy, they have a hospital corpsman. With the Army, they have a medic. And when I first went in, I went to boot camp in San Diego. I went to Corps School in San Diego. And then following that, they sent me to the Bethesda Naval Hospital, which is on the outside of Washington, D.C. So to be someone from a very small town in Northern California to all of a sudden being on the other side of the country was very exciting. There I worked both in orthopedics and later in anesthesia. And when the time came up for me to leave, what hospital corpsmen, they have the option of going on a ship or they can go with the Marines. The Marines are a branch of the Navy, and we joke around, we say that the Marines are the men's department of the Navy. So I opted to do that, so they sent me back out to California to Camp Pendleton. And what they did out there was they trained you for combat, for battlefield survival, in case any of your Marines go down, and the emergency medicine that you might have to conduct there. And it was there that I not only gained an appreciation for medicine, but an appreciation for what the human body can do. The military is, I don't know if I should use the word notorious, or it provides a wonderful opportunity for individuals to discover what they're capable of, both physically and mentally, what they can withstand. So it was during that time that I really gained an appreciation for the human body. And I remember one of my instructors, the military doesn't really offer compliments. So one of my instructors said one time, you're not stupid. It didn't say I was smart, but he said I wasn't stupid. So it was like, oh, okay, I wonder if I could maybe make a success out of going to college. So that was my first start, was, making that big decision. I'm going to leave the military, I'm going to start college. And I went back up to Northern California. I did my undergraduate and master's at Cal Poly Humboldt. I was active as a rugby player as an undergraduate. So again, the sports performance was something that I really enjoyed. I had a fantastic strength and conditioning coach, Drew Peterson, shout out to you. And, a combination of those influences then led me to pursuing the PhD. And I remember there was a point in the late 80s, and now I'm letting everybody know how old I am, where I was watching the Olympics, and they had this individual, Naeem Soleimaliou, and he was about 4'11", and about 135 pounds, and he did a clean and jerk of 405 pounds. And that's, somebody that was able to lift 3 times their body weight in competition. That was the first time I'd ever seen that.
Wow.
And it wasn't the muscle mass. Obviously, he didn't look like an NFL linebacker. So, I started thinking, well, there's something else going on here. And that kind of planted the seed. Again, it's like, okay, I know what the human body can do, but how does it do that? So that really piqued that interest and set me down that path of researching sports science.
Wow, that is amazing. That's really an inspirational story, I think, for all
great.
of us.
It's been great. It's been a fun one. Yeah.
So you're saying that your first contact with sports science was in the military, and that
Yes.
was before college.
That was before college. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I was a high school athlete, but back in that time, the mindset was still that if you lifted weights, you'd become muscle bound and you'd lose your flexibility and you wouldn't be as good as an athlete as you know. So it was kind of funny to actually have coaches kind of talk you out of going to the weight room. I know.
That's
There was a
really
time though.
interesting.
There was a time though, and it's the coach at the strength coach at University of Nebraska-Lincoln, the forerunner of strength and conditioning, Boyd Epley. He tells the story of going into Bob Devaney's office, who was the head coach of Nebraska-Lincoln at the time, and being told, if any of these guys slow down, you're fired. And so, I mean, they just didn't know. They just didn't know. And nowadays, it's, to have an athletic program without a strength and conditioning coach is just unheard of.
Yeah.
So.
Wow, it's interesting to see how it has evolved over the time.
It certainly has.
Lot.
In a short period of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me now, I mean, I couldn't imagine
having
not lifting.
Yeah, as a volleyball player, where would you be with a vertical jump if you didn't lift weights?
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. I would be probably injured as well without all the training.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So to move on to our topic for today we're going to talk about a topic that I think you're very familiar with. It's plasticity.
Yes.
Could you just explain what it is in just simple words so all the listeners do understand what you're talking about?
Okay. So plasticity is a term that was first coined by William James, in the 1890s. And it referred to he was a psychologist, so it referred to the ability of the nervous system to adapt to influence. And then following that, there was a professor, Cabral, Ramon Cabral, that he said, well, at a certain age, we're fixed, right? There's no change to the nervous system. And basically it was more nature rather than nurture. It's like your nervous system was inherited by your parents, and you're going to be good at things or you're not going to be good at things depending upon your genetics. And, I still joke around with my students that, at the age of 25, you start to die, right? Because that was the thing. It's like, if you want to learn a foreign language, learn it before 25. If you want to learn how to play an instrument, learn it before 25. In the 60s, there was a wonderful scientist, Dr. Marion Diamond, and she had started at Harvard and then she went to Berkeley, and she started to play around with this notion of maybe we're not fixed. Maybe we can still have some changes later in life, even though it might be a little harder for us to perfect those skills than if we started younger. So she really opened the door. I mean, that was neuroscience. She was the first neuroscientist. In the 80s, she was at Berkeley, and she started doing work on Einstein's brain, of all things.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and started looking at the mass of the brain and if it was different from everybody else's because, of course, Albert Einstein was a genius. And then in the 90s, she really changed the field of neuroscience to say that we are not fixed. We can continue to change. And so then the push became, how does this happen? So, again, you think about it, it wasn't, 30 years ago, right? Until 30 years ago, we thought, oh, that's it. If I'm 26, my 26th birthday, I should just forget about learning how to play guitar.
Oh my God, a lot has changed.
A lot. Yeah. It's been fantastic. And then I think it was around 2000, 2001, there was a research project on mice, and they looked at changes to the nervous system with skill development, strength development, and endurance exercise. And so what they found was that with the motor cortex, that part of the brain that sends out messages to the peripheral nervous system or the limbs, if you learn a new skill, the motor cortex becomes very active. And there's a lot of what we call motor map reorganization, where your brain actually has these changes that take place depending upon the skill you're trying to learn. And after you learn that skill, then the activity in the motor cortex starts to die down a little bit because you've perfected that skill. And I think if you've seen anybody play guitar, it just the speed and the precision that their hands move, it's a wonder, and it takes years and years and years to perfect that. So that's an example of a skill development. With strength development, we see that the motor cortex becomes active, like you're learning a skill, but then after a period of time, the activity dies down just like it does with skill development, but people continue to get stronger. So yeah, I love to use the example of a clean and jerk and a snatch because the Olympic lifts are my favorite lifts. And so if you learn a clean and jerk, it is an exercise that's highly built upon technique. You know, you can take somebody and you can fix their squat in an afternoon, right? I mean, a clean and jerk, it's going to take weeks, if not months, to have somebody really perfect that motion. So we see the motor cortex activity begin to die down after they start to learn the clean and jerk. But they continue to get stronger, and part of that can be attributed to hypertrophy, right? I mean, you put on muscle mass, so you're getting stronger now because you have the muscle mass. And then you reach a plateau where I'm not putting on muscle mass anymore, but I'm still getting stronger. So the question became, well, okay, if the activity is not happening in the motor cortex, and if they put on the muscle mass, where are they continuing to get stronger? So, you know, with the example of earlier, Naeem Soleimoglu, we call it subcortical, so it's underneath the motor cortex, and it's taking place with the motor neuron and the muscle fibers itself, so the motor unit. And that is where we see the synaptogenesis start to take place. So we have a nerve that was interacting with these muscle fibers initially, and now that nerve is starting to create new branches to go to more muscle fibers. And the more muscle fibers I can get into this movement, the stronger I'm going to be. So basically that is the emphasis, or that's the onus behind the plasticity. It's like, where in the body is this improvement taking place? If it's not happening in the motor cortex, where in the peripheral nervous system is it taking place? And really we look at the motor unit. And there's another little molecule in there called mTOR, which is the mechanistic target of rapamycin that helps with some of this growth. And that's a molecule that is really starting to get studied a lot these days.
Okay, so if I would like just say plasticity in one sentence, it's basically the adaptation of the brain that's actually happening and adapting to the training?
Nervous system. It's called the
system.
central and peripheral nervous system.
Okay.
Skill development is more the brain. Strength development is more the peripheral nervous system and the motor unit.
Okay, that's very interesting. And I just want to jump back to where you talked about the age.
Mm-hmm.
Is there still an age that is like where it's easier to learn new things when we go back to the neuroscience, like where it's easier to like create those new neuro pathways?
Yeah.
Or do you say like it's going to be harder, but you're still possible to do it after the age of 25? Like, is that maybe still a high of age where it's easy?
It becomes harder. It does become harder. And honestly, I think the question is, does it become harder because of the nervous system, or does it become harder just because we quit trying?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's, I think if you look at individuals as they age, we quit jumping, we quit sprinting. I mean, we quit doing these ballistic movements, and hopefully, I do see that starting to change a little bit. I mean, people are becoming much more active in their later years. So I don't think we really know if there's an age where it slows down where it's almost impossible. But if you look at who is the most plastic, it's going to be infants. I mean, kids. Kids are a sponge. Mm-hmm. You know, my son is 13, and the knowledge about basketball that he can spew with statistics, I don't know where he keeps it. I mean, I struggle to remember what I had for lunch yesterday, and he's like, well, that person in 19, you know, I'm like, okay, kid. So it is very, kids are incredibly plastic. I mean, they retain everything. And if they don't find it useful, then they discard it. But I mean, the things that they really are passionate about, that's going to leave a mark in their nervous system. So, yeah, I think that, you know, I probably up until 25, I think that we were kind of right about that. It becomes harder, but again, the question is, does it become harder because we quit doing it?
Okay, so as we are born, everybody has basically the same ability to learn. And it just gets harder if you don't use your brain. Like, if I compare this to, I don't know, Wolff's Law. Like, if you don't use your bones as much, like, they get weaker. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So is it the same with our brain, with how we do it?
Absolutely. Yeah, and you know, let's not get too critical about society these days. But, you know, now we have artificial intelligence, which does things for us. And I don't know if you've seen the movie Wall-E, where they're on the spaceship and it's the animated cartoon, and
Yes.
it's everybody's just laying on a lounge chair and they're fat and all they care about is watching TV and putting stuff in their body. And we might be moving that direction.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So we've already gone a little deep into it, but let's just maybe explain also in a couple sentences. First, just an easier way, what happens when you train, when you go and lift, if you do squats, whatever, what is happening in your body? Like, how is your body adapting to this training?
Yeah, so a squat is a great example, and I encourage the use of free weights. And I think, you've been in my classes before, and it's, sometimes they're like, well, machines, beginners should use machines. And I'm just like, no, beginners should use free weights, because it's not just the muscles, it's the nervous system as well. So when you put yourself under an external load, let's say you're doing the squat, and you step away from that, I mean, you've had that feeling before. You have to steady yourself. So everything in your body is trying to find this equilibrium. So not only your prime movers or your agonists, but your antagonist muscles, everything's communicating together to make sure that you move in the most ideal fashion as possible.
Okay. I want to go into like the idea that if you want to get stronger, if you want to get better, if it's a sport, if you're an athlete, or if it's just a person who's trying to get fitter, people always say, or you always hear, you just got to train more. You just got to do more. And I personally feel like that is in some way true, but also in some ways very not true, because like in the end, it goes down, how do you train?
Yeah.
You got to train smarter. And what does the science say to that quote, basically?
Yeah, more is not always better. And the question I always have is, what is the end goal of your training? Is it lifespan? Do you want to live longer? Are you training for a sport? What's the sport? And really making your training specific to that. I'm one of these individuals that I will say, if you're in the gym more than an hour, you're socializing. There's a certain point in the body where cortisol levels rise, and what cortisol does is cortisol will spare carbohydrates and they'll burn fat. So it's like I say, more is not always better. It's like you get in there, you have a purpose, you train specific to that purpose, and if it doesn't serve you with what your purpose is, then don't do it. Mm-hmm. And it's especially with college athletes, I joke around. It's like I have as a strength and conditioning coach, I don't program bicep curls and tricep extensions. I don't write arms into a workout. And people are like, why? And I'm like, well, it's a single joint exercise. It's a small muscle group. How is it beneficial? I mean, you can, if you do bench press, you're working your triceps. If you do an overhead press, you're working your triceps. You don't need to go in and work a single joint exercise. And I also tell them one of the reasons I don't program those is because athletes are going to do them anyway, right? Yeah. And they're going to go in there, they're going to do bicep curls and tricep extensions because they want big arms. Mm-hmm. It doesn't necessarily serve the sport that they have, but they want for the aesthetics. And, that's bodybuilding. And bodybuilding trains a different way than an athlete would train. So look at what your goals are and stay specific to those goals. Excuse me, the time you spend doing resistance training in the weight room, let's say once those 50 minutes, once those 60 minutes are done, you still have more time in the day. I mean, mobility training, it can be a part of your strength and conditioning. The nutrition is a huge part of your strength and conditioning, right? The sleep you get is a huge part of your strength and conditioning. So people think it's like, well, I'm going to the weight room and train. You can train all day long. It's just how are you doing that and how are you spending your time?
Okay, that's very interesting. So you would say that people who are not athletes, if they go in there, they could still get something out of it within an hour, maybe even half an hour.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And the American College of Sports Medicine just changed their guidelines on resistance training. And it used to not be the volume that it is now. So, they're saying, 3 days a week with resistance training. And 20 years ago, resistance training wasn't even something that was that often prescribed by a medical provider. Because again, it's the number of times I've worked with a female, either personal training or strength and conditioning, that has complained, well, I don't want to lift weights because I don't want to get big.
Yeah.
And if it was easy to get big, you'd see a lot of really big guys walking
Yeah.
around. It's not easy to get big.
Yes.
So, it is getting in there and finding something that you enjoy, and then, modifying that program over time so your body is constantly being stimulated. But again, it's what are my goals here? And set those goals and then work toward those goals. So, I mean, if you're a collegiate student athlete, what's my sport? And you devote that time to that sport. And then when you're done with that sport, you need to change your workout, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, okay, now I want to live to be 80. I want to be able to be a grandfather and lift my kids up over my head. You train for that. So.
I have a personal question to that because I'm a volleyball athlete, so I need to be very quick. I need to be explosive. So I do lots of sprints, pogos, plyometrics, and obviously like strength. And then do you think it would be beneficial for me to go on like longer runs to work my endurance too? Or is that just gonna do the opposite that I want? Yeah.
So if the energy systems that we have, and I always take it back to the rate limiting enzymes. So volleyball is a sport that is very much dependent upon ground-based power. You want that vertical. At your age, you have plenty of time to run, right? And so, we talk about mitochondrial health. What we don't want to do is we don't want to take your fast twitch muscle fiber and convert it to type 1, right? That slow oxidative. So again, I take it back to the rate-limiting enzyme, that first energy system, adenosine triphosphate phosphocreatine. The rate-limiting enzyme is creatine kinase. So you want to train that metabolic system to be as optimal as possible, right? That's not to say that in the off season, if you want to take some time and swim and walk long distance or even go for a jog or something, highly beneficial, but it's not going to make you a better volleyball player.
Okay, so something that's interesting because I did do genetic test where if you have a line from your very fast twitch to a very slow twitch and like very good at endurance, I was like completely all the way for endurance. So I would have been a great marathon runner, and then I decided to go into volleyball. But do you think you would see a change there? Like my muscle fibers have changed into more fast twitch?
Yes, yeah. So we do see some conversion, and typically it's from type 2A to type 1 and type 1 to type 2A. There's not a great deal of type 2X, that true fast twitch fiber in the human body. And there was a study done recently, one of the first of its kind, where it actually looked at the predominance of type 1, type 2A, type 2X in Olympic athletes, Olympic weightlifters. And surprisingly, they didn't have that much type 2X. They had a predominance of type 2A. But what we don't want is we don't want that type 2A going to type 1. We can convert, and that's that plasticity. So if you have type 1 fibers and you're not training long distance running and you start training for resistance, that's, that mechanistic target of rapamycin and the mechanical stretch of the muscle with resistance training, we're going to see more neurons start to branch off with that synaptogenesis to recruit more muscle fibers. So that's that conversion of type 1 to type 2A.
Okay.
That's plasticity.
Yeah,
the changing of muscle fibers. Yeah.
That's where we're coming back to that topic. So if we're talking about athletes here in general, most athletes have like an off season and then a very intense season. Yeah. And do you say that this intense season does limit them with their adaptation? So is it going to be harder for them to actually adapt and they have more time in preseason to actually do that? Is that going to affect them? It's
when someone is actually competing in season, we focus more on just maintaining, right? Just, don't lose any of the strength, don't lose any of the speed, don't lose any of the power. We just want to make sure that you're staying competition ready. So I think if you're somebody that doesn't maybe see a lot of playing time, if you're a freshman, if you're a sophomore and you're waiting for that spot in the starting lineup, I think we can see the positive changes. I think to have the true positive changes in a competitive season, that athlete has to be living the lifestyle. I mean, they have to be eating the calories that they need. They have to be getting the sleep that they need. You know, it's hard as a collegiate student athlete to kind of turn off the external noise. College is fun. I had a lot of fun as an undergraduate.
Yeah.
But you have to learn to filter out some of those distractions depending upon what your goals are. If you're going to college to have fun, have fun.
Yeah.
If you're going to college to actually see what you can do at the end of 4 years, then see what you can do at the end of 4 years.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a very tough 4 years, I would say. Like
It
hard
is.
work.
Yeah,
It takes a lot of hard work.
And
so.
it's, I mean, the nagging injuries, the overuse injuries, God forbid the catastrophic injuries,
Yeah.
I mean, it's something tearing. It can be a very brutal time. But again, the regenerative powers, I mean, your body heals so quickly. In those early 20s, where you can withstand a great deal of work.
That's
So,
incredible.
yeah.
The human body is just...
I miss it. I miss being able to recover in 24 hours.
Yeah.
These days I go out and, I play basketball with my son, and the next day I'm like, oh my God, I can't move.
Yeah. I understand that. It's definitely something where, I'm very grateful that our body is capable of doing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. And there's so much information out there about training, about our body, everything. Like, there's all this information on social media, YouTube, everywhere.
Yeah.
And like, how do you see is there actually a lot that is actually backed up by science? And for example, I see a lot of like those challenges where it says like, do this program for 28 days and you'll completely transform. What does science actually say about those quick fix?
There's not a quick fix.
Yeah.
I mean, let me rephrase that. The quick fix is determined by how you live your life. Yeah, it's easy to say if you do these exercises, it's going to be like, transformational. But if you do those exercises and then go through the drive-through, and eat 2,000 calories of processed food, it's not going to make a difference at all. So, social media is hard. It's hard to navigate. And that's where the critical thinking piece truly comes in. It's like, who is this person? What are they selling? What's the message? Why am I saying this? And I advocate for social media. There's a lot of very good platforms out there. I think, we've talked about platforms like Squat University, and he's a physical therapist that's also CSCS, and he offers great restorative techniques and exercise, movement, and how to identify flaws that lead to injury, or how to recover from flaws that have led to injury. So it's a double-edged sword. It's really up to the user how they use social media. But again, it's so much of it out there. It's just somebody trying to sell something, trying to get ads or trying to earn money. That's the wrong way to go about it.
Yeah. Is there any other, I don't know, trend or something that you see a lot where you say that's actually really not true?
Most of the time it's supplements.
Okay.
It's that nutrition piece. And again, it goes back to people trying to sell something. And I mean, the genetic variability, that principle of individuality, we are all so different that people just can't go on and say, hey, if you take this, you're going to be amazing.
Yeah.
It's like, well,
everybody's
maybe
individual.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're seeing, the GLPs, the rapid Ozempic and things along those lines. It's like, people are they're swearing by them. We don't know the long-term effects of those. And I think now we're starting to see that, osteopenia, the brittle bone as a result of GLPs. So, again, the long-term ramifications of that are still out. And there's a reason why things stand the test of time. And those are the things that you should adhere to.
Yeah.
Play around with other things. I mean, even a diet changes as you age. I mean, I was somebody that, I used to swear by intermittent fasting. I had a 6-hour food window. I'd eat between noon and 6 p.m. And then as I got older, I find that I need more protein in the morning. So now I'm having breakfast, which, it's a hard habit to change. I'm not used to breakfast, but, I have to choke down a couple eggs in the morning. But so you find out what works for you. And, you know, I mean, take in what other people say, but, and, you know, investigate it a little further. You know, what is it they're really pushing here?
Mm-hmm.
And then, I mean, you know your body better than everybody else.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I really like the idea about just trying out what works for you. You don't
Yeah.
have to find the right thing right away. Like, as you say, it changes over time. As you get older, you
Yeah.
might need other things more than other things. And
Yeah.
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 So
It's a very good friend of mine is a nutritionist, Jake Mertens, and he used to be for the Texans. And, you know, we talked just the other day actually about, you know, just how you would cycle through a workout. It's like, oh, here's my hypertrophy phase, here's my strength phase, here's my power phase. You know, we're talking, you do the same thing with your nutrition. You know, it's like, oh, my workouts, I'm having more volume and less intensity. I probably need more carbohydrates. I'm more on a strength phase. I'm probably going to need more protein during this and maybe a little less carbohydrates. You know, so you play around with your nutrition the same way you would your workout.
yeah. So you have done a lot of research also and worked with athletes. So you kind of like have both views. And is there something that you see that athletes do in the gym, or it doesn't only have to be athletes, that actually were something that the research really supports, but everybody's kind of just ignoring it?
Again, you know, you have to kind of take a step back and ask what my goal is. You know, and if you're you know, if you're a student athlete, you know, again, it's just what does this serve me? You know, and if it doesn't, just eliminate it. You know, so honestly, I mean, any activity is going to be good activity, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, if you really start getting down into the weeds, it's like, okay, what is going to be best for me now at this point in time in my life based upon what my goals are? And then you create that roadmap and you start working from there. I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it does, definitely.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. I want to make sure that our listeners have something that they can take away right away. So if someone who, let's say, is just training 2 to 3 times a week, don't have a lot of time, what is something that they can start right now to be able to train smarter?
Time is an interesting thing. So now we're starting to see a lot of research coming out with what's called microdosing. So it was very common, you know, and I'm guilty of this as well. Well, I don't have an hour to go to the gym, so I'm not going to go to the gym. An hour, you don't need an hour. You know, I mean, you do 20 minutes, 15-minute walk. I mean, even walking is going to be something. So, I mean, the advice would be, if you're starting with something, get off the couch. Do something, right? I mean, park further away from the store. You know, force yourself to take the stairs. You know, anything like that is going to just make yourself better in that moment. It's a start. So again, it's just, you know, create your goals, write down your goals, make the plan toward working for your goals, and then structure your life around what those goals are. I mean, what else? You know, what's more important than your personal health, right?
Yeah,
you
exactly.
can't show up for anybody else if you're not well.
Yeah.
So, you know, create that template and then set the goal and determine how you're going to get to that goal.
Oh, I really like that, because I feel like some people they have goals, but they're maybe also very big, and you feel like not even starting, because it's like, you can't do it anyways. But if you start small, like, you can work your way up there, and just going for a 15-minute walk, I think everybody has the time for that.
You do. Yeah, you do. And it, you know, especially, I mean, if you're in a relationship, you know, the two of you go for a walk. You know, if you have children, you get out and go for it. Set the example.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, just live a life that other people look at and be like, oh, that's nice. You know, and again, you know, you mentioned somebody that, you know, maybe is borderline obese or morbidly obese. That didn't happen in a day, you know, and finding yourself where you're comfortable with who you are, that's not going to happen in a day either. It's going to take some time, and you don't look at it and be like, I'm never going to get there, right? You look at tomorrow, and it's like, today I walk, tomorrow I'm going to walk. And you do that. You know, there was a joke we used to say about the training that we had in the military, that if I were to take a Post-it note and put it on a wall of all the days left I had of training, I'd never finish, because I just look at that and be like, how am I going to get there, right? There's so much.
Yeah.
But if I were to just put a Post-it note on the wall and be like, I did what I was supposed to do today, and then pretty soon look at the wall you've made. You know, and that's really the mindset you have to take.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're kind of coming to an end, so
already I just got here.
I want to say, like, from the whole conversation now, what is the one thing that you wish everybody would take away today?
Move.
Okay.
Move.
Great.
I mean, that's all it is. Yeah, it's overcome that inertia and just do something for yourself today. And it's funny because I'll ask people, how do you feel? And the number of people will be like, oh, I feel great. And it's like, is that because you've never felt better?
Yeah.
It's like, because, you can see people and they've got the dark circles under their eyes and, it's, I feel great. It's like, do you?
Yeah.
So it is. It's just move. Practice movement. We were not designed to sit in a chair, and we are designed to get up and to move around.
Yeah.
And, find something that and if you don't like what it is that you've done, find something different to do. I love to go by the park and see all the people out playing pickleball, in their 60s and 70s. And, I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
So, just move.
That's so cool. I feel like start small, work your way up there, and don't be afraid for change. Like,
oh, no, not it. Yeah. Embrace it. Embrace change.
Awesome.
Everything you want is outside of your comfort zone.
That is very true. That is very true. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your knowledge. And thank you for coming to the Sports Science Lab.
This was my pleasure. Thank you so much, and good luck. I think you're going to do great.
Thank
You're
you.
gonna do great. Yeah.